well, it doesn't have anything to do with this. Well, yes, it doesn't. It also has a lot to do with immigration. You know, I heard a story today that said there are 75,000 student visas out there from countries that are unfriendly to America. Out of these 75,000 visas, student visas, 15,000 of those student visas, people that were issued those student visas, have never shown up for class. Never. Now, if we go back to 9/11, those people that enacted 9/11 were here on student visas and also never once showed up for class because they're not here to go to school. Now, when you have 75,000 of these things out there and 15,000 of them never show up for class, that's a problem. My friends, that's a problem. So what do they do whenever a tragedy happens? Over the past couple of decades, the federal government's used just about every major national tragedy as an excuse to take even more liberty and freedom away from us. And without a doubt, this Boston Marathon bombing was a great national tragedy. I don't think that any of us will forget the images that we saw on that day. All of the people responsible for this attack should be exposed, hunted down, tried, and punished. Unfortunately, what always seems to happen is the American people seem to get punished for most of these tragedies. Over the past couple of decades, we've seen again and again that if we just give up a little bit more freedom, the authorities will be able to keep us safe. But you know what? It's impossible for them to keep us safe. There's no way in the world the federal government can protect us from all the bad guys in the world. We're a country that's absolutely teeming with soft targets. Malls, churches, schools, concerts, sporting events. No matter how much money we spend, there's no way the federal government will ever be able to provide enough security for all of those soft targets. Even if our society morphed into something that resembled George Orwell's 1984, the government would still never be able to guarantee our safety. Unfortunately, in the aftermath of this attack, there is inevitably going to be calls for increased insecurity, more anti-terror legislation. The answer always seems to be to expand the police state. But it's getting to the point where all of the security is becoming suffocating, yet it doesn't seem to keep us any safer. When does all this end? Are we going to completely throw out the entire Constitution in some sort of desperate attempt to feel a little bit safer? Or are we going to choose to live our lives without fear no matter what others try to do to us? You know, Benjamin Franklin once said something. I want to tell you what he said. I'm going to quote Benjamin Franklin here. He said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." That's how important our liberties are. You know, the way the American people have responded to national tragedies over the past couple decades would have made our founding fathers ashamed. They're probably rolling over in their graves right now. The American people have been way too willing to give up liberty in exchange for the promise of safety that doesn't come. We've been told that terrorists hate us because of our liberties and freedoms. We've also been told that in order to be safe from those terrorists, we have to give up those liberties and freedoms. So who's winning here? We seem to have forgotten some of the most basic lessons in life. If you cower in fear when a bully comes after you, what's the bully going to do? He's going to keep coming after you because his actions are being rewarded. Those that are trying to create fear love it when you become fearful. They're winning. It's exactly what they want. The appropriate response to national tragedy is to reject fear, to continue to boldly live our lives as if nobody could ever shake us. Have some intestinal fortitude. Yeah, there's common sense things that our government should be doing to keep bad guys away from us. The number one thing the federal government should be doing is to secure the border. Every single day, thousands and thousands of people that don't have anything to do with this country are sneaking across our border. Yet the federal government has absolutely refused to seal our border for decades, even when they know that there's terrorists from around the world coming across our southern border. And until the federal government secures our borders, they should not ask any of us to sacrifice one single ounce of liberty or freedom in the name of national security. Am I wrong on that, or do you agree with that? As long as they refuse to seal that southern border where they know the terrorists are just walking across it, then how dare they ask us to give up freedom for security when they're leaving that border wide open? Let's use some common sense here, people. You know, the Obama administration treats our border like a joke. It continues to import huge numbers of people from radical areas all over the Middle East. They continue to tell us domestic terrorists is the greatest threat that we're facing. You know, a lot of our politicians are buying into this philosophy. Senator Lindsey Graham says the attack in Boston is a perfect example of why the homeland is the battlefield. So if the homeland is the battlefield, then who is the enemy? Well, like I said last week, the U.S. Army Reserve Training presentation recently identified evangelical Christians as religious extremists. And since Barack Obama entered the White House, there have been numerous government reports that have identified Christians, constitutionalists, patriots, anti-abortion activists, all gun owners, are all potential terrorists. So where does all this end? Are the American people becoming the enemy? Are we our own enemy? According to the government, we are. They're trying to make us constantly scared to death of each other. This is a constant divide and conquer, divide and conquer. You never know, you never know who's who. What did I just start the show with? Out of Matthew. People will hate one another. They will betray one another. Will the entire nation exist in a never-ending environment of fear? Fear of each other? Fear of our government? They're already telling us to turn our neighbors in. We'll eventually have the TSA and the Department of Homeland Security patrolling every mall, every church, every school, every sporting event, every concert. You know, the bad thing is, though, the bad guys will always be able to find a soft target. There'll be more and more terror attacks in the future, no matter how much security we pour on. Once upon a time, this nation was blessed with peace and security, but now the hedge of protection is gone. The federal government could give the Department of Homeland Security trillions of dollars a year, and it wouldn't make much difference. We live in a world, my friends, that's becoming increasingly unstable. Bad guys are going to do bad things, and these are the beginning of birth pangs, and these birth pangs are getting harder and harder all the time. We need to wake up here, folks. We need to wake up. We need to wake up to the prophecies that are telling us in advance that these things are going to happen, yet we're ignoring them. You know, this is why what just happened in Boston is so alarming. The entire city was put into a complete lockdown for almost 2 days. This was a preview of what could happen nationwide if martial law was declared. This was an over-the-top display of force that clearly demonstrated to the rest of the world how incredibly frightened we are. Some of the things we saw in Boston were absolutely disgraceful. Do you know what this tells the rest of the world? It tells them that terrorism works. It tells them that one small incident is enough to send the entire nation into a full-blown panic attack over one teenage terrorist. You know what? None of these heavily armed men even found the second suspect. He was actually found by a neighbor that had gone out to take a smoke. And like most Americans, I absolutely hate terrorism in all the forms that it takes. But we're not going to prevent future terrorism by treating the U.S. Constitution like a piece of trash. We've now shown the world that we're willing to throw out our most important constitutional rights the moment that a threat arises. This is going to encourage even more terrorism. You see, those that engage in terrorism want attention. They want to create fear. When we give them attention and we allow them to create fear, we give them exactly what they want. They're terrorists. Is there anyone out there that can defend what they saw in Boston? A no-fly zone? Can you defend a no-fly zone over Watertown? I can't imagine any American that still loves the Constitution being proud of what happened. Most Americans seem to be more than willing to disregard the Constitution these days. Most of them are incredibly scared. They just want someone in a position of authority to assure them that they'll be safe. So I'm sure that in the months ahead, we'll see security get even tighter in this country. With each tragedy, it'll just get tighter and tighter until we can't barely even breathe. This is not the answer to our problems. In fact, it's just going to make more problems. And at the same time, the government is enabling this by not sealing our border, by still giving out student visas to terrorist countries, and then when they get here, they never go to a class. And it raises no alarms. Do you see how this makes no sense? They take away our rights, our freedoms, our liberties, but yet they just allow these terrorists to come in. At what point, my friends, does this make any sense? Any sense? All right. I had to get that off my chest. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I want to talk about the fig tree prophecy. And I want to talk about this cashless society that's coming, because this cashless society that's coming, I'm going to explain this in detail. Some of this is going to be my opinion. Some of this is just common sense. And I mean, you'll see some of this stuff is just plain common sense. But when it comes to the prophecy of the fig tree, what is this prophecy of the fig tree? They say when you see the fig tree start to bud, I'm paraphrasing here, then you know that spring is nigh. So when you see these prophecies coming to pass, one time in history prophecies, things that could never happen in the past, things that can never happen again, prophecies that are exact and coming to pass with other end-time prophecies. And yet people are ignoring this. This is a bad thing. And let me tell you why. You know, there's a chain of events that have happened since, I'd say probably 1948. And it's been ongoing since then. I've already been into this 45 minutes. I've spent too much time on this already. Let me take this quick break. We'll see if the studio works when we come back. We're going to talk about this end-time prophecy, the chain of events that's prophesied after Israel returns to the land. We're going to talk about the cashless society and this mark of the beast. I want you to stay tuned for this. Now, I've talked about the mark of the beast many times before. I'm going to talk about it many times again because it's very important that we understand the mark of the beast and that we understand that this cashless society is going to bring this mark of the beast.